Who's touching my head?
Who's touching it? This is a flag. See? Who's touching it? This is a flag.
Tiger, let me know when. Tiger, let me know when. Okay. So we're going now. Okay. All right. So peace and power to everyone. I'm going to welcome everyone to this year's annual Kwanzaa event. We normally do it live in person, but in the last 2 years, including this year, we had to do it via Zoom. And, you know, in a digital age, we're having a challenge with the technology in the beginning, but we're going to see if we can do our best to work through the challenges that we're having. I always like to start with the salute to the Universal African flag, the red, black, and green. It says, we pledge to honor and respect the universal flag of African people and African nationhood, remembering the red for the blood, suffering, and greatness of our ancestors, the black for the color and culture of African people, and the green for the land stolen from us, which we will reclaim to build our nation. We are one people, we have one aim, we share one destiny. Ashe?
Flag power.
And I like to always do an ancestral acknowledgement by saying that this is for the ancestors, this is for those people who stood before us, on whose shoulders we stand today. We always have to be mindful of acknowledging our ancestors, because after all, without them, there would be no us. Ashe?
Ashe.
Now, on this particular day, I would like to acknowledge one Mr. Carter G. Woodson. Today is actually his birthday. December the 19th, Carter G. Woodson is the man that developed what we know today as Black History Month. So we want to salute him. Now I want to begin to introduce the panelists and let them all get on one by one. We got Brother Kwabena Rasuli. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here, good brother.
Okay. So I'm going to introduce everybody and we're going to let everybody speak. Brother Kwabena is part of the Clear the Airways movement. And Clear the Airways is an initiative to get disagreeable rap music off the radio. And we're gonna let him lay out and talk about the Clear the Airways project. Brother Kwabena, you all right today?
I'm doing good, brother. How are you?
Okay, I'm doing well. We're off to a rough start here, but we're getting it together. Now we got Brother Aj Tymba, who is hold on. I have to also mention that Brother Kwabena is the nephew of the great, blanking on the name now, of the great Geronimo G. Jaga Pratt, original Black Panther, who was wrongly convicted and sentenced incorrectly. And then upon his release, he set the record straight about a lot of infiltration. So he comes from a long line of freedom fighters. We got Brother Aj Tymba, one of my favorite people. He's an African-centered educator. He's an author, he's an activist. He authored this book here in addition to a few other books. This is one of my favorite right here. It's called Truth for Our Youth. And I think if you have children, if you have grandchildren, if you see children, if you know any children, they should have that book because it's just that good. Peace and Pan-Africanism, Brother Aj. How are you today?
Peace and Black Power, brother. I'm blessed, man. I'm glad to
Nice.
be here. See my brother Kwabena in the building. Peace. You know, I'm glad to be here.
Nice. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Now, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna let Kwabena, you're gonna be Inspector Deck. We're gonna let you set it off so that you can set the tone for everything that's gonna come subsequent to you. So I'm gonna give you the floor for about the next 20 minutes. I'm gonna let you lay out. I want you to talk about the Clear the Airways movement and what the goal of the initiative is. He adjusted up.
I'm here. Sorry about that. I had to just take care of something for a few seconds. But Baragani, everybody that's here, and the Clear the Airways project, like you said, it's a project. Would you call it disagreeable music off these radio stations, and which definitely disagreeable. It leads to so many disagreements and disrespect, and so our movement is about getting that crap off. So we'll want to talk about that and a couple other aspects of it. Music is culture. Culture is everything. You know, with Kwanzaa, we're dealing with culture. We're dealing with some work. You mentioned my uncle Geronimo G. Jaga, Black Panther, Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party. revolutionary nationalists, had some struggles with the cultural nationalists who founded Kwanzaa. And, you know, I was going through your book, Fundamental African-Centered Thought, a little bit today, dealing with Kwanzaa and dealing with the founding of Kwanzaa, and where the credit is given, but the credit goes beyond that. And so I appreciate you breaking that down. And a lot of the things that you break down in that book, F.A.C.T, Fundamental African-Centered Thought, that definitely we recommend also that our people get a copy of that book and share during this Kwanzaa season as a zawadi, as a gift for our people, so that the knowledge is so very important. But I got to talk about issues with Kwanzaa and my uncle and what's happening, because I was talking to a sister earlier today, and she's a Black Panther Cub. Both her mother and father were in the party. And she was like, Kwanzaa, you speaking on Kwanzaa? Why, we don't do that. I said, no, some of us do. We do Kwanzaa programs. We've been doing them here in Gary, with the United African Movement every year for decades. Since I've been there since for 30 years now. We've been doing them for at least 25 every year. We recognize Kwanzaa. But Southern California is where the United Slaves Us organization were pretty much based at. And again, my uncle was part of the Southern California chapter of the Black Panther Party, Deputy Minister of Defense. And he got that position after the assassination of one Bunchy Carter. Mm. And Bunchy Carter, along with John Huggins, in January 1969, on the campus of UCLA, where my uncle was on campus that day and was sent away by Bunchy. He told me to go bring somebody to the infirmary or to do something. But when he came back, Bunchy was no more. He was gone. And so was John Huggins. And this is a history that we have to study. We have to learn. We have to study this history. It's very interesting history. It's a powerful history. These brothers were together when they were having free UEP Newton rallies at the sports arena in Los Angeles. They were together on stage. They were meeting to deal with who was going to work with the Black Student Union, or how they were going to work that out when this fracas took place. And again, these brothers were assassinated. There were people who weren't even involved in the assassination who were locked up and blamed on it. So it's a lot of history there that we need to check out and look at. And again, today, so many Panthers who are, and many of them are still with us, because during this time, 52 years ago, they were very, very young warriors out here. Both the members of the Us, a lot of those brothers were young. As we know, Karanga is still with us. And many of the Panthers were still young. You mentioned, again, Geronimo, he's gone. He's been gone 11 years now, but there are people who were still there and who were there, who are still here, and who sometimes talk about it. So the conflict continued on for a while. Brothers were shot in San Diego. Brothers were, going at it. And there's still so many brothers today, like Brother Timothy Hayes, don't mess with Kwanzaa. Our recent ancestor, Brother Bruce Dixon, out of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party, doesn't mess with Kwanzaa. I am really, really good friends with Bunchy's niece. His one niece was my older brother's classmate, and I'll never forget when she told me that she was Bunchy's niece when we were in junior high school. And and after we talked about Bunchy and Geronimo, and they talked about them being at each other's home. So that the beef got squashed in terms of what was happening in the streets. I want to get that story one day, and I got to get that story. But it's very important because we still, there's still so many wounds there that have to be acknowledged. And I don't disparage anybody, especially who's involved in that, or people who know about that, who do not recognize and celebrate Kwanzaa as such because of some of those reasons. At the same time, we still do deal with it because of the principles. The principles are so very important for our people. And as a matter of fact, when Uncle Geronimo was locked up, he would send Kwanzaa cards. I remember sending him a couple boxes of Kwanzaa cards when he was locked up so he could send them out. So we recognize, we understand these principles, and we know that they're, again, so very important for our people to deal with. One of the principles that we deal with is Kuumba, creativity. And that's part of our culture. All these things are connected, but our culture is everything. And one of the main aspects of our culture is our music. When Uncle G got out in 1997, he did a rap at Leimert Park. It's online, you should check it out. The rap is powerful. I love the rap because it's like just straight up raw. He just got out, been out probably a month or so. And one of the things he talked about was how they're using psychological warfare to have us even go against our own mamas and our families. And he talked about how they're using the music to do this. And this was like, what, now 24 years ago. Wow, 24 years ago that he got out as a political prisoner. And salute, man, brother Russell Maroon Shoots too, who just made transition the other day. And free all our political prisoners, Sundiata, Mumia, our brothers in Nebraska. But we need to put more energy and more work into making sure our political prisoners are free. Matula Shakur, Brother Pondexter, I shared with two brothers, other brother passed away. Chip Fitzgerald passed away this year also. But yeah, we got to put more and more pressure on this system to release our political prisoners. Rochelle McGee, there was a program for him yesterday. He's the longest held Black revolutionary political prisoner. He was in the Marin County courthouse shootout with Jonathan Jackson and others, one of the only survivors. And again, he's still locked up in prison. It's ridiculous. So he needs to be released too. And again, there was a press conference for his release yesterday. But the music, the music used to talk about our political prisoners. No Arrested Development, Africa Inside Me, they dealt with our political prisoners. KRS-One and a lot of music that he made dealt with our political prisoners. The music during the golden age of hip hop would talk about all sorts of things. It would talk about our freedom fighters. We talked about our history, our culture. You know, and that's one of the reasons why the powers that be said, no, we can't have this, and took control of our music. And today we have what we have. It's been going on for quite some time now. Right now, we're looking at a lot of these ideological fathers and grandfathers of these youth today that push that poison, and we're looking at them like heroes, when we should be totally getting on them, even more so than these artists today, especially when they don't apologize, when you don't acknowledge what they've done. Our brother Cam, recently, I think it was after Nipsey Hussle was assassinated, was killed, Cam apologized, and he didn't have much to apologize for because he was one of the conscious rappers that was out there. But these other rappers, before we start putting them on pedestals, they need to at least apologize and then make amends for a lot of the damage they've done, because they've done so much damage. But Clear the Airways Project is a project that was started some time ago. Our part in the 5 elements of hip hop has been as a DJ. And back in the day, back in the 80s, I'm DJing, and I have little girls coming up to me asking me to play songs by Luke, songs by NWA, and I'm not playing that. We're at a skating ring or we're at a party, we can party and dance without that, and it's disrespectful to you and to your people. I'm not playing it. And I just saw it getting worse. So we started struggling with that at that time. When we got to college, we worked as for the newspaper, and we did a conscious hip hop column every week for the paper. It was called the Weekly Wrap Up. Well, it's pretty interesting. That's the same title as our radio show today, the Weekly Wrap Up. And so we dealt with, we did a top 10 of the songs, and it was easy to do a conscious top 10 because that was the time. It was a golden age of hip hop. So we have songs from Cool Mo D. We even put some K Solo on there. Poor Righteous Teachers, like we mentioned earlier, Boogie Down Productions, KRS-One, Public Enemy, King Son. That was our Queen Latifah. That was our top 10, and we partied and danced to Eric B and Rakim and so forth. You know, there's so many Intelligent Hoodlum, so many others who were making and pushing this sort of music. And then it switched on us. The powers that be. They talk about the secret meeting they had. One of the brothers from Bone Thugs and Harmony. There's a good piece with him rapping about it. You know, how they wanted to support the prison industrial complex. And the main thing was to get us away from this African people loving themselves and our music, and also being revolutionary, because we've been loving ourselves and our music for quite some time, even before the advent of rap, hip hop. So it's just been a struggle. And today we're at a point now where, like Dr. Frances Cress Welsing said, and she kind of talked about, again, there's a little piece in your book, Fact, too, that where you quote her, but she said right before she transitioned, not too long before she transitioned, that rap music has annihilated the self-respect of Black people. It has annihilated it. And commercially and even underground, she is so correct in much of what we hear today in this music. In 2020, there's a video out there, you can check it out. 200 rappers died in 2020. There were a few of them, like MF Doom, like Brother Ecstasy, and a couple more. One of the brothers from the Roots, who passed from natural causes or causes we don't know of. But the vast majority of these rappers, and I'm glad they showed on this video because they give a little snippet of their videos and their lyrics, they died from gun violence. Almost 200, and I'm sure they didn't get everybody. In 2020, it set a record in the US, this violent country, of increase in gun violence, percentage-wise, from year to year, from 2019 to 2020 set the record. In 2021, it's said that we may be like 21,000 people dying from gun violence. And you know, Africans are reported to be 12 to 13% of the population in this country. And there's no way we're going to be 12 to 13% of that 21,000 people who succumbed to gun violence this year, who were killed from gun violence. And it's pretty sad, it's embarrassing, and it's dangerous that when we look at these numbers, that when we see the increase in shootings in Philadelphia, in New York City, in Birmingham, Alabama, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, even in Chicago, the increase, in Indianapolis, in St. Louis, all around the country, when we see these increases, we know these are containment areas where African people are struggling to survive this country. My brother Diallo, he calls them containment areas. And this is where a lot of this killing and the shooting is going on. And then you turn the radio on, and the radio station on Memorial Day 2021 has as their #1 song, Back in Blood, where the rapper says, "I ain't got nowhere to go. I done shot up everywhere they was. I ain't got nowhere to go. I done shot up everywhere they was," repeated in the chorus. This rapper, and I don't, you know, when we talk about this, we mention some names, but we just mention the names because these are token tools of Euro domination and African annihilation. And so we acknowledge them to an extent. But if they go to jail, if they're one of the 200 who died in 2020, if they decide they're going to go conscious and stop doing this system, this industry, who are the real culprits, they'll just get somebody else. They'll just pay somebody else to do this. There's plenty of brothers and sisters who don't do this, who refuse to do this, and we love them for it. And before we finish, we want to talk about the Elevated Arts and Culture Collective that we've just started for us to support each other. Artists who are doing this sort of work, and not just in hip hop, but in all forms of the arts. But at the same time, this rapper Pooh Shiesty, that's his name, who's locked up right now in jail for shooting somebody last fall, but he shot somebody that next weekend at a strip club in Miami, and he's been in jail ever since. The other rapper on there is a rapper named Lil Durk out of the Chicago area. Lil Durk's brother, that same weekend that Pooh Shiesty went to jail for shooting somebody in a strip club, a security guard or whatever. Lil Durk's big brother was at a strip club south side of Chicago, suburb of Chicago, and got shot in the head and lost his life. Same weekend, and they're on the radio, "I ain't got nowhere to go. I done shot up everywhere they was," European on a radio station. And we'll wrap it up in a minute. But I just want to talk about, and that song was the #1 song in the country for African children and youth on Memorial Day weekend. Later on in the summer, there was a rapper out of Memphis, the same place where, what's his name? Young Dolph, the recently killed Young Dolph in Memphis, same place he's from, a rapper named Moneybagg Yo. Moneybagg Yo had a song called Time Today. He's gonna spin your block twice and come back, it's gonna look like the world end. Oh, we shot you, we hit you, oh, we was aiming for him. Not that, oh, we hit you, we sorry that we shot you, we were aiming for him. Just, okay, we hit you, so what? But we was aiming for him. Nobody gonna say nothing, everybody get hit. That's what he says in the song that was #1 for our children and youth all around this country. Nobody gonna say nothing, nobody gonna snitch. I thought snitching wasn't cool, but nobody gonna say nothing, so everybody get hit. So these are just a couple of examples this year of the type of poisonous fratricidal music that's being force-fed to the masses of African people, and it's been going on for decades. And so as we think about Kwanzaa, as we think about the Nguzo Saba, these principles, some of them require collective work and responsibility. One of them requires unity. And one of them talks about our creativity, and we have to have control over that. Right now, these Europeans have control over our culture, and we have to wrestle back our control. You know, we have to wrestle back control of so many things. We can't even go to a little small convenience store in our community without them being ran by people who don't care about us, who don't look like us. And again, it's something else you address in your economics portion of chapter in your book, controlling the businesses, like Malcolm said, like so many people talk about in our community. So we have a lot of work to do, and we got to put in that work. Clear the Airways Project right now, I mentioned the Elevated Arts and Culture Collective. We were working with the Nubian Leadership Circle and part of their arts and culture cadre. And like when we push this work that we do with the Clear the Airways Project, getting this crap off these radio stations, this pornographic, violent, vulgar, disrespectful, N-bomb dropping, misogynistic music off the air, people always say you got to provide an alternative. And that's not the goal of Clear the Airways Project, to provide our alternative. Our goal is to get it off, However, we're working with other groups and other people, and we formed this Elevated Arts and Culture Collective. And so what we're saying is that this collective is going to support each other. It's going to look to each other when we have events or to create events, or when we need help on that end. However, our art has to be art that uplifts the African masses. And to join this collective, you have to pledge to provide and push and support art that uplifts the African masses, and pledge not to do anything in your art, in your work, that does the opposite. And if you do decide that that's something what you want to do, okay, just leave the collective. And if we find that you're doing that and you haven't left the collective, we're gonna put you out the collective. So, but we want to come together, and just like our brother Greg Tate, who just passed, you know, they had a rock collective that they formed with just a few people that's been going on for a couple of years, for a couple of decades. So we got to be collective. We got to work together, collective work and responsibility. That's part of that group. So join the Elevated Arts and Culture Collective. Work with the Clear the Airways Project. In New York City right now, there is a resolution that's been sitting in the council for over 2 years, condemning Power Hot 97 and Power 105. I think those are 2 stations. It's been sitting in the council for 2 years, condemning those radio stations. The largest city in this nation, in this country, has that in their city council chambers. We did a push earlier this year with CMOTAP, with Educate to Empower, and also with the National Black Leadership Alliance and Clear the Airways Project. We got in touch with each and every council person and encourage them to hear this resolution and pass this resolution. We still need to get that done. So it's a Clear the Airways Project resolution sitting in the New York City Council. So let's work to get that done. We have a campaign called Turn It Off, #Turn It Off. This is an embarrassing and a crazy campaign, but here's the pin for it. One of the pins we have, but part of the campaign, this is from the National Black Leadership Alliance and Hood Research out of Detroit, Clear the Airways Project. But our campaign states that turn off any source of music with lyrics about shooting and killing Black people. What a campaign that we have to have something like that, but it's very important. We got to do it, but turn off any source of lyrics with music, or any source of music with lyrics that talk about shooting and killing Black people. #Turn It Off. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, man. I hope I didn't go too far over, but you know, we got a lot of work to do as we recognize and celebrate and deal with Kwanzaa. So do the work, do the study. And again, I'm glad I had the opportunity to share with the people today. Check out our website also. It's at cleartheairwaysproject.org.
Thank you for that. cleartheairwaysproject.org, because that was my next question. I was going to ask you how people can get in contact with you, but everyone can go to cleartheairwaysproject.org. Their website again is cleartheairwaysproject.org. And right now I want to mention and give a special shout out to DJ Tymba and the Fullblast Radio Network. They're supporters of Clear the Airways and the Clear the Airways Project. They're carrying this live right now on their outlets. So I want to definitely give a huge shout out to him and everyone over there at fullblastradio.com. But just to spin off into what you were saying, the music, it helps to facilitate the disunity that we see among us. And unity is one of it's actually the first principle of Kwanzaa, umoja. U in Swahili means the state of. Moja is the number one. So umoja is the state of oneness. And years ago, Marcus Garvey said, the greatest weapon used against people of African heritage is disunity. And that was 100 years ago. Today in 2021, disunity is still one of the major challenges that we have as a group. And so strength in numbers, we're always going to be stronger together than we will ever be separate. But the problem is we're not organized, and organized people can do anything. And so working together works. We see every other community of people do this but us. So that first principle of unity that you mentioned is very important. And just to expound on what you said about the violence in the music, it's gotten to the point now where violence is not seen as violence. The young people now see violence as culture, almost as if it's something they should be doing. And so the music is what helps to facilitate that culture where they think that it's normal to commit acts of aggression against people of their own group. My wife, my beautiful wife is here. She wants to chime in. She wants to just speak for a few minutes to kind of spin off of what you were just talking about with respect to the music.
Can they hear me? I just want to say from here. I don't.
Oh, she doesn't want to get on camera, although she was already on camera.
And before that, if I can, real quick, because you mentioned how it was. Well, look at the beautiful Watoto. You mentioned right off. You mentioned Carter G. Woodson's birthday today.
That's correct.
And he talked about that back door, and to the point where, you know, they don't even have to have a back door. We'll cut it out. And I mean, that's where we are in this ratchet slop hop with creating our own back door. But also yesterday was the 75th anniversary of the birthday of Steve Biko. And Steve Biko's quote about the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed.
Correct.
I mean, there it is too, bro. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to just mention that, share that. So I'm looking for, I want to hear you.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. I apologize. I don't really like being on camera, so I only have done like a handful of Zooms. So, but I am very grateful for everyone that is on the chat and for everyone that will be receiving this frequency as we. I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge the ancestors and all of those that came before us that have put the work. And since energy never terminates, they are continuing their work and their journeys, because in science, we already know that energy, once the body is done here, this vehicle, energy continues forever, beyond eternity, continues forever. So they are still here in their works, and everything that they have done is still here. So now it is our job to kind of move it forward and finish their projects or acknowledge their projects so that we could fulfill their mission. And I just wanted to say that music is super important because we are musical beings, and music, the frequency sets our bodies to either be in a harmonious state or chaotic state. That's why it's super important for us to have control of our music. Once we have control of our music, then we could begin to heal and save the music, as such project that the brother is doing that we are very grateful for, because music has the ability to heal. And yes, music unfortunately has the ability to do the opposite, as such as 528 hertz that helps to repair the DNA. So I know, and I apologize that I don't really know like a lot about like rap music like Raw does, but I know that how it makes you feel. I know that if you have the proper or agreeable type of music, it could bring forth healing in the body. It helps to reduce stress. It helps to lower your blood pressure. It helps to put you in a more agreeable state of mind, more peaceful. So I know that music is very important because of that. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for what you are doing, because we have the children and they're listening to this kind of music, and that kind of disbalance their selves. So thank you so much for what you're doing. I don't like being on camera. I'm leaving now. Thank you.
You're cool. You're cool.
All right. So on the topic of music.
Okay, I just wanted to say one more thing.
That's
it. From here, they could hear me because I don't like being on camera. So since you are music, you are sound, you create and you sustain by frequency, by certain frequency. So agreeable sounds are higher frequencies and tones that the cell of the body prompts so that you could be healed. So that's all I wanted to add.
All right, so Brother Aj, we're gonna come to you next, but we have Kaya. Kaya's 10, and Kaya actually wrote and prepared a song for Kwanzaa. So we're gonna step aside and let Kaya do her thing, and we're gonna show that young people can do actually good music with good positive messages in it for us as a people. Kaya, stand up.
Yay, mama! The yawning on camera. Can you see yourself in the camera?
Kwanzaa is a holiday to celebrate and sing. We honor our culture with the red, black, and the green. Celebrate our ancestors, freedom fighters to this day. Grateful for your sacrifice. So we say our song, say Kwanzaa, let's go we go Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa, light of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa, let's go we go Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa, let's go light of Kwanzaa. A magical week of Kwanzaa, celebrating family. We decorate and commemorate the 7 days annually. We light candles each day for each of the 7 principles. We light on part of our heritage. We light them because it's traditional. Kwanzaa, let's go we go Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa, let's go light of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa, let's go we go Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa, let's go light of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa has promotion and critique Kalia. Kwanzaa has Ujima. Kwanzaa has Ujama. Kwanzaa has Nia. Perfect, my sister. Kwanzaa has Karumba. Kwanzaa has Imani. Kwanzaa is the time to celebrate and party. Kwanzaa, let's go we go Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa, let's go light of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa, let's go we go Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa, let's go light of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is our magic. Kwanzaa is our past. Kwanzaa is our freedom to celebrate our past.
Nice, good job, Mama. Good job.
Good job, mama.
Okay,
Yes.
everybody.
Yes, indeed.
Jay.
Jay, that
Not
was
yet,
Kaya.
not yet.
That was Kaya. Thank you for that. Kaya, thank you for that.
Brother Raul, I just would want to commend Kaya and you and your queen. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. For encouraging her to create something that the whole Kwanzaa concept, if our wish is for it to become deeply internalized into the psyche and thus the behavior of our people, the Ningazo Suba, the Ningazo Suba Saba, as well as the framework under which it operates to become internalized well, then we would certainly need, and this is Marimba Ani's analysis, that we certainly need a musical representation, musical framework for putting this principle into a framework that people can assimilate and feel and believe in, because it functions on the musical level. She claims, and I agree, that one reason that Kwanzaa really hasn't become a mainstream, ongoing kind of concept among our people is the fact that it lacks music that Christmas has, for example, that makes Christmas so powerful in the psyches of African people and everyone who comes out of that Christian framework. So certainly you all are to be commended for encouraging that, and hopefully she will continue to write Kwanzaa songs.
Yes, yes, we appreciate that. And she will. She's actually written a lot of songs. That's probably the most recent one. But we're gonna, that, by the way, everyone that's watching and listening, that is Dr. Uhuru Hotep. He's an African-centered educator on the university level. He's also an author, he's an activist. He's easily one of the top Pan-Africanists in the country. And we got some more Kwanzaa music being shown on the screen by Brother Kwabena.
Excellent,
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kwame Steve Cobb and Shaban Duka. Man, it's Kwanzaa time. It was featured on the Proud Family years and years ago. But yeah, check out that the 7 principles from Kwame Steve Cobb and Sister Shaban Duka. Pan-African is also excellent CD.
Yeah, most definitely. So that was Dr. Uhuru Hotep. We're going to come back to him in a minute. My wife wants to say something again really quick.
I just have a question. Is there a way that music could be compressed to higher frequencies that are in harmony with nature? For example, as I mentioned, 528 hertz that repairs DNA, and other frequencies such as 432 that says to be the frequency of our earth. If we compress the current music, that I don't qualify to speak about music because I don't do the type of work that you guys do. That's your particular gifts and talents. But I'm wondering, the music that you guys work with or put out or collaborate with artists or being an artist yourself, can that be possible that in the future it could be compressed to 432 or 528 and other agreeable sounds that are in harmony with nature, so that while they are grooving and enjoying the music, is also promoting healing at the same time on the cellular level? Just a question.
Brother Kwabena, that was a question for you. Did you get that? I think Brother Kwabena has stepped off for a minute.
No, I got the question, and I was listening to a really good point. Our brother Bernard Creamer, who wrote the book, Who Stole the Soul, The Weaponization of Hip-Hop, he deals with those frequencies in that book. We also had Dick Gregory's daughter, Ayanna Gregory, with us during one of the sessions that we had with the Nubian Leadership Circle, and she talked about those frequencies. With this Elevated Arts and Culture Collective, this is one of the type of things that we need to start sharing and talking about and dealing with. And so I think there is a possibility that it probably already is. I'm sure it's music like that we've created at those frequencies, but that is something that we need to look at, because you know what? They know it, and that's what they do, and they're using it again, as you mentioned, brother, as a weapon against us to put certain messages in those frequencies that are, and sister, the wife mentioned it also, that have us behaving in a certain, in this horrific way that we're behaving too much, like Dr. Francis Cress-Welsing said, because of the music, the frequencies, and even the lyrics in this music. So yeah, so that's something we have to work on. Let's do it.
One last thing that I wanted to mention. I apologize. He's looking at me. He's like, quick. The music back in the days used to automatically be tuned to 432, and now it has changed from 432, the Earth's natural frequency, to A440 that has that horror music, disagreeable sound in the background. A440 just kind of takes things out of balance and makes you agitated and it brings forth negativity, that A440. And I know that that's in the industry today. Most of the music that is on the radio is, if not all, is tuned to the A440, that even if you say fluffy rabbits and teddy bears, you still got that A440 sound in your lyrics.
You know, and I know, because I can't wait to hear my brother, Brother Tymba also, but you know, there's a brother named Gregory Walker. He wrote this Memnon group, and he's talking about marginalizing rap music, and he is really dealing with those frequencies in the brain. So we need to check out some of the stuff that Gregory Walker, Pan-African, is also who's dealing with it. He's like, I think I'm deaf on this music, on these lyrics and what have you. Check what that brother's dealing with concerning this, and what, just had to mention that.
Nice, we will. Okay, so Brother Aj, we appreciate you. We thank you for having the patience of a samurai. We're gonna come to you next. We got Brother Aj Tymba. I discovered this brother. I was trying to find some videos online to teach my children about Black Solidarity Day. And I found Brother Aj. His message is very cogent, he's very concise, he's very clear. And so Brother Aj, the floor is yours for the next 20 minutes. I'm gonna let you do what you do and explain the importance of Kwanzaa.
All right, peace and Black Power, family. If nobody tells me otherwise, I'm going to assume everyone can hear me pretty clearly. I want to certainly give greetings to Brother Raul. I want to say up top, check this book out, family. Check it out. Fact, check it out. Very, very good book, comprehensive information. Very good. It reminds me when I was a much younger man of a book that Zach Kondo wrote, Baba Zach Kondo. Black Students' Guide to Positive Education. It's in that vein, covers a lot of things. So if you, particularly for people who are novices, who are new, it's perfect. I think it should be recommended reading in many of our organizations. Secondly, I want to shout out to Brother Corbina and the Clear the Airwaves Project. I want to give a shout out to the young sister that sang beautifully, to your wife, my brother, and to all the Africans and New Africans that are watching this program live or will watch it later in recorded form. I've certainly shared it on my platforms, and hopefully other people have too. I'm going to try to be brief because I believe there's elegance in simplicity, and there's power in simplicity. Family, I'm going to start by telling you what one of my jegnas used to tell me. Hold the line, he said. He said, as time goes on, people are going to be pulling out different parts of Malcolm, the parts that are convenient, different parts of Robeson that's convenient, different parts of Fannie Lou Hamer that's convenient, whatever's convenient for the trends of the times. He said, I hold the line of nationalism. I hold the line of liberation, Black liberation. I hold the line of Black nationhood. And that's the line I'm going to hold. And I think that it's important that we give this a historical backdrop for those who don't know who are watching. Kwanzaa did not develop in a vacuum, right? There's this historical continuity, a long line of history that goes back thousands of years, but in this country, hundreds of years. And Kwanzaa immediately comes out of a movement, family, the Black Power movement of the 60s and 70s, some say up to the 80s. And this movement was fundamentally a Black nationalist movement. So this means that this movement was talking about self-defense, nationhood for Black people. Have your own nation, not fighting for the enemy's army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, not raising their red, white, and blue flag, not singing their national anthem, but having your own. It was also talking about race pride and race unity. And it was this type of movement that gave birth to a US organization founded by Dr. Molan Karenga, Revolutionary Action Movement, Republic of New Africa, and we can go on and on. And so this comes from a movement that all of us need to know about. That Black Power movement, there's a lot of answers. If we study that movement, there's a lot of answers there. It also, the Nguzo Saba, the holiday Kwanzaa itself, comes from an entire theory. Kwanzaa is just the holiday celebration part of it, but it was a Kawaida theory, a little book where Karenga and the US organization breaks down their whole kind of philosophy. And I should say that the US organization, Dr. Karenga are coming from a cultural nationalist position. So, and cultural nationalists would teach things that like your values are the most important thing, the things you value, your priorities, your customs, your practices. So culture is not just the food we eat like we were taught in elementary school. It's like the clothes you wear, the names you carry, the names you have, and the names you answer to. It's your values, it's your customs and your rituals, right? Your lifestyle, all of that is your culture. So when Brother Kwabena says culture is everything, he is right and exact. Culture is everything. Everything you do, the type of music you like, that's your culture. The type of dances you do, that's your culture, right? The way you style your hair and things you think make you look pretty or make you look manly or womanly, that's your culture. The types of games you play, that's your culture. How you spend your disposable or so-called free time is culture. So it's very important that we situate Kwanzaa within that historical context. It's coming out of the 60s, 66. And Black people we have a Black Panther Party, we have all these organizations, and they're calling for nationhood, they're calling for self-defense, our own Black independent institutions. That's what Kwanzaa comes out of, that tradition. It didn't just develop out of a vacuum. Now, I want to be concise because I know that we may have started late and the other people may want to contribute. I want to give time for dialogue after this. So I want to now jump to what I think are some of the important contributions of Kwanzaa or benefits, why it's important that it was created in the first place, why it's important that we try to celebrate it to the best of our ability, along with some cautionary stuff I want to warn us against doing too. Number one, Kwanzaa reconnects us to Africa and to African-centered values and practices, right? So, you know, when you get married in the United States of America and you're a white person or a Negro, the first thing you want to do is have a bachelor party, right? Or a bachelorette party, where you get drunk, you got people, exotic dancers. What does that have to do with marriage? How does that prepare one for a wedding? How does that prepare one for a lifetime of commitment? It doesn't. But we mimic the oppressor, not just musically, but in every way. We mimic what they do, right? So what Kwanzaa does is it interrupts and disrupts this notion that we gotta be like white folk, that we have to think like them, dress like them, pray or meditate like them, raise our families like them. It completely disrupts this notion. It says, listen, we can listen to the music of our choice. We can dress in African garb if we choose. We can adopt African names, like I have. My name was not always Aj Tymba. I changed it after college many years ago. So Kwanzaa does this. It reconnects us to Africa because we've been hit on our head really hard, family. We got amnesia. So we identify ourselves in all types of ways, right? But very rarely do you hear the masses of people say, I'm an African or new African. You don't hear that. So this is one of the things that it does. A second thing that Kwanzaa does and why it's important, in my humble opinion, is that it promotes classic Black nationalist concepts, right? So if you're talking about, if you look at the Nguzo Saba, all 7 principles, they all are connected to this idea that we constitute a nation. We're not just this loose assemblage of people, you know, that just happen to go to concerts or just happen to go to school together or live on a block. We're a nation, family. And we may not be a functional nation for ourselves, but we are certainly a dormant nation and a nation in becoming, right? And so Kwanzaa helps us really grasp this idea. It's not just about the candles, family, and the mat and the habaragani and the African clothes. Those are parts of ritual. Those are customs. The idea here is that Black people are subjugated and colonized people, and we have the right to be free. And this holiday comes out of a movement where Black people were talking that all the time. It wasn't talking about, ooh, she got a fatty. It wasn't talking about, ooh, look at him. It wasn't talking about, oh, that's a nice car. Oh, I got to get that. It was a different time, family. People was talking about, if there's a group of sisters talking back then, and you came up and they talking about Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, you was like, what's Wretched of the Earth? They would turn their back to you. This cornball don't read Wretched of the Earth. You don't know about Fanon. You talk about Souls of Black Folk. You talk about who wrote that. They wouldn't pay you no mind. It was a different time. Intelligence was valued. Family cohesiveness was valued. Defending yourself against your enemies was valued. This is how we can have a Black Liberation Army, right? Which is another show for another time. And a Black Panther Party and a Republic of New Africa. I want you to think about how bold we were. The Republic of New Africa wasn't an organization. It was a government. It's a provisional government. What do you mean provisional, Brother Aj? It means that they were so bold and courageous and they believed so much in Black nationhood. They said, we're a provisional government. We're gonna have everybody in place so that when we win this revolution, we will have our government ready. Provisional government. That's bold, isn't it? We don't even think like that anymore. We don't think about we're gonna govern ourselves. We go to the white man's banks, schools, everything. It's become, we just accept it. Few people are saying, wait a minute, like Marcus Garvey said, wait, said I came to the United States. I saw the white man thriving and I said to myself, where's the Black man's army? Where's the Black man's banks? See, that's the type of thinking we need. People that think out the box like that. So that's the second thing, promote this Black nationalism. What do we mean? Self-defense, nationhood, race pride, race unity, right? Cooperative economics, building our own independent institutions, education for liberation, all of this comes out of Black nationalism. And Kwanzaa helps to promote all of that. And then I think a third thing Kwanzaa does, and why it's important, checking my time, is that it helps us to fuse abstract theory with boots on the ground work, family. Did you ever notice that we don't just have a head? Imagine if all you had was a head on a plate, right? You just got your big head on the plate, but you can't do nothing. You can think all types of stuff, but you have no arms, no hands, no legs. You can't move, you can't do anything. So we have a head that's connected to a body, right? This is telling us in a metaphorical way that theory must be operationalized. We must do things on the ground, right? Kwanzaa helps us to do that because when you look at those 7 principles and you look at the little paragraph breakdowns of each one, he takes an abstract principle and he shows you how you can operationalize it. And that was something that our people needed. So it didn't just become the 7 values. Now you know, okay, when we say Kuumba, that means dance, music, it means fashion. It's a lot of things. So that was important. And then number 4, and last thing, we can very easily, I mentioned this before, get caught up in what we got, what we want, who got what, who's doing who, what's hot. And we still oppressed and colonized and imprisoned and disconnected and ain't got no money, poor, raggedy, out of doors, as Elijah Muhammad used to say. And we could forget all that because we way over there somewhere when our reality is right in front of our face. I can't walk outside my home in Harlem, where I was born and raised, and not see heroin addicts everywhere, crack addicts everywhere, people begging me for money everywhere. So I can walk through my blissful life like I got, like it's just about me and what I'm doing. And I could really get lost in the mirage until I go out there and I see, nah, man, it is bad today, just like it was in the 60s, just like it was in the 19th century, in the 18th century. So this reminds us, family, that we have to work together. Reminds us, family, that we gotta try to divest, unplug from the enemy. The new Matrix movie is coming out Wednesday, family. What do they say? Unplug from their matrix. Get it out of them. Divorce the white man. He's a domestic abuser, family. He talks to you bad. He treats you bad. Divorce that man and get with yourself. We got everything we need in this country. We have engineers, doctors, scholars, writers, people that do advertising, marketing. We got athletes. We got everything. that we need, but we keep looking outside to other people. And we complain when Mexicans and Puerto Ricans and all these other people, they're doing what they're supposed to do, family. They're practicing nationalism, right? That's all we got to do. And it's not new, right? It's not new. We've been doing this from day one. So family, if you're not a maroon, which means you steal from the white man and what he got, you take his ideas, you take his resources, and you build an independent community, that's one way you could do it. Another way you could practice the nationalism is to write books and movies that push these principles. You could join the Clear the Airwaves project, and you can bang against these nefarious radio stations and these corporations, and in many cases the naive rap artists, and in some cases the greedy rap artists. And we can educate them. See, the as I see it, the approach has to differ a little bit. We bang on the enemy. The enemy is your enemy. You bang on him. You expose him, you challenge him, you dethrone him. But your family members who are a little lost, the Negroes, you try to educate them. You try to teach them that they're moving in the wrong direction. And you know what? When you say to yourself, when you count the Black people out that disagree with your politics, I'm going to remind you of a young man named Malcolm Little, who got knowledge himself as a child, but lost his way, right? And thank the universe and the Most High that there was a Nation of Islam that didn't teach him all this stuff for the first time. He knew some of this stuff, but they reconnected him, right? So the brother you see that's out there selling this or doing that or that, if he's taught and if she's taught properly, they can rise and be a great leader or resource in our community, like so many other people, elders, so many people we can name that were lumpen proletariat and became these great advocates for the people, right? And so really, that's really all I want to share with you. I want to thank you for your time. Remember, family, don't forget, this is about liberation. We have to fight for liberation. We're just talking about a particular holiday and a particular time that teaches particular principles, but it's all connected to Black people want foots off of our neck. We want control of our own destinies. We want to protect our families and maintain our families. We don't want to have somebody else telling us how we should think, what we should wear, how we should name ourselves. And with that said, I yield. Thank you, family. Peace and Black power.
Peace and Black power, brother. Thank you for that. I just want to kind of ride the coattail for a minute if I could. And I'm noticing that when it comes to Kwanzaa, a lot of people that look like us don't necessarily want to co-sign it if or embrace it if our oppressor doesn't co-sign it. So it almost has to have a certain stamp of approval in order for some of us to accept it. And I think that's part of what you're talking about with respect to our embracing our culture and ourselves. Kwanzaa is not something that just began in America. It actually started in, there's harvest festivals in different parts of Africa. But Kwanzaa, as we know it, was patterned after what's called Umkosi, which is coming out of Southern Africa. And it was a 7-day festival. And it was a harvest festival. It was a first fruits festival. So this concept of first fruits festival is not something that just began with Kwanzaa. Actually goes all the way back. It's in Central Africa, Southern Africa, East Africa, even in Northern Africa, in ancient Kemet, they celebrated a harvest festival. So this is our way of trying to reconnect with our cultural heritage as African people. And I think it's important also to note, because a lot of people also try to throw shade because they don't like Dr. Karenga for whatever reason, not understanding that Dr. Karenga is not the sole creator of Kwanzaa. In fact, the idea to start Kwanzaa was not even his idea, although he gets the credit for it to this day. So some people try to use him as an excuse why they don't want to celebrate it. And I think those people are just a little misguided. And so
I would like to add to that too, is that I think that's a common misconception. I happen to have a good brother of mine named Dr. Scott Brown, who's a professor at UCLA. He's a fellow Africana Studies scholar like myself. And he wrote what is probably the quintessential book on us and Karenga called Fighting for Us. And in that book, he has back-breaking, painstaking research he's done, primary research, articles, FBI records, interviews with the actual people in the original US organization. And he really helps people understand that Dr. Maulana Karenga like most of us men and women, had some shortcomings, but that he said there is no proof that the man was an agent. There's none. No factual proof. It's all word of mouth. So, and even if he was, I agree with you, Brother Raw, at some point, we have to compartmentalize. Now, we do this with thugs, drug dealers, and killers for hire in our community all the time. Yeah, he kills a lot of people. That's still my people. We accept, right? Don't we do that?
That's true.
Oh, yeah, he's a predator of women, but no, that's my man. I know he got a pedophile charge or two, but hey, that's my man. So we forget all that stuff. Why don't we do that with leaders? I'm just curious. Like, why aren't we able to say, yeah, we don't like what this one did, and we don't, okay, so we're gonna throw that aside, but we're gonna take the ideology and the political attraction and the institution building, we're gonna run with that. So we're very selective sometimes in how we do that. You know, what we accept and what we reject. And I think I want to call us out on that. We need to be a little better than that at this stage in the game. You know, it's like my dad, my mother, your parents. You're going to critique them as you get older, right? But are you going to throw them away? You're not going to throw them away, right? We have drug addicts in our family. We got all people that have been in and out of prison. We don't throw them away. We embrace them as family, and we try to get them right.
Good brother. I think I appreciate everything you said, but that same argument is used by the Christian right, the Trump supporters, who want to cling to some of the worst elements and leaders of this nation as heroes, taking down the statues of those Confederate generals and Confederate leaders. I think was a purging and cleansing of their consciousness and psyche, at least an attempt on the part of the white community that we should encourage. They may have made contributions to the building of this nation, but look how they did it. By enslaving Africans, by committing genocide against the Native American people. And the prime example of that would be Trump's role model, his mentor, Andrew Jackson.
With due respect, good brother, we don't disagree. So I just want to interject. We don't disagree, but I'm not talking about the enemy.
Yeah, but the same standard.
Hold on. I'm talking about how we interact and see our own people.
Yeah, I understand that.
I'm not talking about embracing, and none of our people, to my knowledge, have been colonizers or white supremacists. I'm talking about being able to look at our leadership and be critical of them, and yet be supportive, critically supportive, not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Eat the fish and leave the bone. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I feel you and I agree with you.
Okay, so when our, to use Cornel West terms, our white brothers decide that, hey, look, we want to hold on to these particular leaders like George Washington, major slave owner, Thomas Jefferson, major slave owner, Andrew Jackson, major slave owner, and all of these men committed genocide. When the white community says, and Trump made this operation, made this a point, hey, look, if we get rid of these people, we don't have anyone left. Do you remember Trump making that argument? That this is why he felt, and many in the white community feel the same way. If we get rid of these so-called bad leaders, we won't have anyone left. Now, I'm not trying to say that we're on the same level. Our leadership have committed the atrocities that these white leaders have. Well, I'm suggesting that we need to use perhaps the same yardstick by which we measure our leadership. And I agree that we need to keep these people in mind, but I don't necessarily buy into the notion that we should not cast aside, if we have them in our historical experience, those leaders who committed genocide, those leaders who were like an Idi Amin, for example, there in Uganda. But we don't need to go on about this, right, because you need to make some other points.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, brother. You're making an extreme case. I get you if we're talking about a context of a continental African situation. That's radically different, I think everyone would agree, from a so-called African-American context. Completely different. We're talking about leaders like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or leaders like Brother Khalid Muhammad, or leaders like Malcolm X or Garvey, who people have critiques of, right? But we're not going to throw away the Garvey movement. We're not going to eradicate the importance of Brother Malcolm. So what I'm saying is a little bit different. I'm not suggesting here that we be fools and that we embrace with open arms people guilty of egregious crimes against humanity, particularly our element of humanity. What I'm saying is that liberation is nuanced, good brother. It's not black and white, it's gray. And
That's
so
right.
we have to be flexible in our thinking and not so rigid that we become our own enemies. We have to be able to have empathy with our own people.
100%.
That's all I'm saying. So I'm not comparing us to some white cracker and what they did. I'm not talking about them at all. I'm talking about how we do with each other.
Yeah, and even
And
though
you can't even make that comparison.
Even though Elijah Muhammad practiced pedophilia by having sex with those young girls who served as his secretary and creating children by with those young girls, I still respect the work that he did. But I'm not blind to the fact that the Black community doesn't need its leadership to have sex with young girls. Okay, we can agree on that. We
agree, because that's essentially what I'm saying. What you just said is verifying what I said. No, you said you respect him, you don't like that, right? So we're not in debate, brother, is what I'm saying. Unless you just want to make it a debate. I don't see us as disagreeing.
I'm in agreement with you. I'm in agreement with you. I'm being nuanced like you suggest. That's all.
Hold on. All right,
I'm done.
I'm gonna step in. I would like to say also that people talk about this, how this whole kind of discussion started. We're talking about Dr. Karenga and the creation of Kwanzaa. There was Dr. Arthur Graham, who worked at California State University in San Diego back in the 1960s. He had the good fortune of being in contact with Amy Jacques Garvey, who was the wife of Marcus Garvey. This is the 1960s. And there was not a lot of books available on Garvey and his teachings and so forth. So Miss Garvey was thoughtful enough to send Dr. Arthur Graham some papers of some things that Garvey had written. Among them was a brochure called right now, if you search it, it's called the Aims and Objectives of Marcus Garvey, but it was called at the time Aims and Objectives for Movement of Negro People. But if you search Marcus Garvey's Aims and Objectives, you will find it. From that, Dr. Arthur Graham read this, and he extracted 7 key concepts from what Marcus Garvey had written, starting with unity, self-determination, collective work group economics, creativity, functioning with a purpose, and having faith in yourself in all of those endeavors. He gave that list to Joe Vincent, who was a student at the time at California State University. Joe Vincent knew Maulana Karenga and asked him, because he already knew Swahili at the time. Dr. Karenga already knew Swahili at the time. So Joe Vincent gave Dr. Karenga this list and so we want you to translate this into Swahili so we can have an African value system for African people. And that's how the Nguzo Saba was born. Now, today, Dr. Karenga gets credit for being the sole creator of the Nguzo Saba, Kwanzaa, and everything, and that's not necessarily accurate. The same Joe Vincent that gave him the list of these 7 principles at his house in his living room in 1966, I believe it was. They were trying to start a chapter of the US organization in San Diego, and Joe Vincent suggested to Dr. Karenga that he start a holiday, African-centered holiday, just for Black people. And that's when Dr. Karenga went back and he chopped up game and he came back with Kwanzaa. So we cannot give the credit to him as an individual only without mentioning Joe Vincent, without mentioning Dr. Arthur Graham, without mentioning Sister McKinya Sobikwe. And I explained this in the book, Brother Quabin, I was holding up the book. All this is explained in the book in detail. So we don't want to just give Dr. Karenga credit, not throwing dirt on him, not trying to, throw shade, but we want to acknowledge all those other people that were involved in it as well. And so,
thank you for that history, brother.
Yes, sir, most definitely, most definitely. And we have now Nia, who is 11, who has done some artwork around Kwanzaa, and she is going to show her artwork because we talk about culture and art is part of culture. And so Nia's gonna explain to us what she has here in her artwork.
Okay, so Kaya, can you hold the artwork for your sister?
So go Nia, you're on.
Can they see the artwork well?
Yeah, but you don't want to block Nia at the same time.
Oh, okay. So Nia, just say what you have to say,
Nia,
Mama. Go ahead. Let's hear that beautiful princess voice. Go ahead.
Greetings, I am Nia. I am the illustrator of this masterpiece. This artwork is dedicated to you. Kwanzaa is about family, unity, love, culture, Nia, purpose, and don't forget to have fun.
So now you could tell them about your masterpiece. Go ahead, Nia. Let Nia point with the ankh. Give Nia the ankh so that she could bring life to her artwork because she gives meaning, life, and purpose to her art.
This is a red, black, and green flag.
Try to speak a little louder, Mama. Let's hear that beautiful voice.
Red is for the blood, black is for our culture, and green is for the land. This is illustration in the illustration. The red, black, and green heart. The angels of Sala holster. The Jimmy. Red, black, and green Africas. The unity cup. The fruit. And the pinara. The corn. And the cake and the straw mat. And the Kwanzaa papers. And the Zawadi.
And Sawadi means?
Gifts.
And show them the illustration that is actually right behind. So all those things, all those wonderful things that you illustrated is actually back there. So just point to it so they can see. Good.
Okay, we got it. All right.
Yay, good job, Nia. Very good. And now they also want to show, shout out to Sam that
Stand up.
showed what he designed. the
Okay, yeah.
wonderful
So
shirts,
come here real quick one more time.
and Kaya as well.
Okay, so if you can read Nia's shirt really quick. It says black don't crack.
And Kaya's shirt.
And-
Kaya.
Kaya has the same shirt.
I picked it.
Black don't crack.
I picked it for today and yesterday.
Definitely want to give a shout out to Sam's son. Sam, if you can put the T-string link in the chat room, people can get a hold of those T-shirts. All right, so
Is
Kaya
it
move aside.
backwards? It looks a lot backwards.
All right, Kaya move aside. Okay, so now we are going to come to our last presenter, Dr. Uhuru Hotep. Like I mentioned earlier, he's an African-centered educator on the university level. He's an author, he's an activist, very well-spoken, very profound and very prolific in what he writes and what he says. So Dr. Hotep, we're gonna give you the next 20 minutes. The floor is yours, brother.
All right, my brother. Tell me, can you show the slides?
Oh boy, no, I'm not set up to do that. I didn't realize you wanted me to do that. I thought you were gonna share the screen and do that on your end.
I don't have that level of technology with.
Yeah, I don't either.
Technology here with Zoom.
But I read it. If you can just read from it, if you're looking at it, I think people will be able to get the understanding of what you're trying to convey.
I can do it, but whenever I talk to people, particularly using this medium, I like to have some visual images.
Ask Tiger to help.
And
I would have to open
the highlights of my presentation. But anyway, my topic within the context of Kwanzaa is Kujuchakalia, a self-determination. And I'm conceptualizing Kujuchakalia as a construct within the political science term sovereignty. Kujuchakalia is the expression of sovereignty. So hence my presentation, restoring our sovereignty, the next step in the Black freedom struggle. Now, this particular presentation concept was channeled to me in 2010 by the ancestors or by the universe. I was simply the vehicle for trying to capture this concept and idea. Unfortunately, my technology here won't allow you all to see my face. So I'm not hiding because I don't want to be seen. I don't have the technology here because that portion of my desktop is malfunctioning, the camera. So I just want to put that out there. I'm not in hiding here. So we're going to quickly look at a philosophy, a practice, a curriculum that will allow us to restore a measure of our sovereignty, perhaps the most basic component of our sovereignty, the most fundamental component of any community of human beings' sovereignty. And I call that framework, keeping it Afrocentric or African-centered, the Johari Sita, which is Swahili for 6 jewels. And this framework of thought was stimulated, of course, by Maulana Karenga, who recognized that we could use African culture as a gold mine from which to gather concepts, ideas, practices, principles used by our ancestors to build sovereign communities. Communities which were defined by people being able to define themselves within the context of their culture. Now, there are, of course, 6 fundamental expressions of Johari Sita. First would be, and Brother Rollo, you can help me with the pronunciation of these Swahili terms. Chakula, food, Ningo, NGUO, clothing, Maskani, shelter, Ilimu, education or educational, Dawa, medicine, and Kujilinda, self-defense. So what is suggested here, that's the fundamental expression of a people's sovereignty would be their capacity to control the production and distribution of their food, clothing, shelter, education, healthcare services, and self-defense. Those 6, those necessities of life, basic necessities of life. Being sovereign in food production, how do we achieve that? Being sovereign in clothing production, in the creation of shelter for our people, educational services for our people. And of course, we're talking about 42 to 45 million people of African ascent in this culture. Oh, there we go. Excellent. How much land do we need to have in the cultivation in order to provide 3 meals a day for 42 million people, for 42 million Black Americans? How much land do we need to have under cultivation? That's a math problem I give Black students to work on that. How many clothing factories do we need to have and operate and own in order to provide clothing for 42 million people? How many carpenters and plumbers and electricians and contractors do we need to educate in order to build shelter for our people, et cetera, et cetera? How do we restore sovereignty, which means, of course, as you know, because this is an astute audience here, to be sovereign is to be autonomous and self-defining, self-controlling, and self-financing, self-sustaining. To be sovereign is to be independent, 100% independent. So Johari Sita is a framework. We can go to the next slide.
Thank you. Okay, so hold on, just hold that up. the next slide. That's not working. Okay, go ahead, baby.
Can that would be slide number 7.
Okay. Why is
The
it?
Johari Sita is the title.
Sorry, just bear with him having a little bit of technical
Why is it going?
difficulty. There you go. Just have to scroll up.
Is this? Why is it not working? I don't know why.
I can still proceed on.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Expanding upon this notion of the Johari Sita as the 7 critical areas that
Let me
the
help you.
leadership
Let me see.
need to focus on if they are really committed with restoring our freedom. We need to exercise that freedom in 7 specific multi-billion-dollar markets: the food market, the clothing market, the shelter market, etc., serving the 42 to 45 million people in this country who consider themselves to be African Americans or Black Americans. So I'm talking about taking control of our economic and financial destiny as a nation. As Brother Aj mentioned, we're a nation within a nation. No novel, new idea. It's been around for a while, but that's what we are. If we want to look at ourselves from that perspective. Okay.
It can be
It's a
seen.
weapon in the war.
Oh boy.
Johari Sita is a weapon in the war to restore our stolen sovereignty. Who stole our freedom? Who stole our definition of self? Our self-determination. Well, it was stolen during slavery. We lost our sovereignty as a inevitable outcome of being enslaved. In fact, sovereignty and slavery are mutually contradictory terms. You can't have both of them occupying the same space at the same time. People are either they're sovereign or they're enslaved. And I'm suggesting that we are enslaved to the people who produce our food, to the people who produce our clothing, and they're not Black folk, to those who build our shelter, those who create the education institutions. Of course, we're slaves to the medical establishment. And certainly we don't defend ourselves. We don't have that kind of infrastructure and apparatus in place. And of course, these are fundamental dimensions of nationhood. The Johari Sita is a set of criteria, standards for evaluating our CREEP, our CREEP leaderships, philosophies, and practices. A standard for evaluating our cultural leaders, this is what CREEP stands for, our cultural leaders, our religious leaders, our educational leaders, our economic leaders, and our political leaders. Evaluating, having a standard to evaluate our leadership is something that we really don't have. The Johari Sita provides us with a criteria, and that is their capacity to organize the Black community, me and you, to become sovereign in these 6 critical areas. That's the criteria for evaluating the philosophies and practices of our cultural leaders, our celebrities, our religious leaders, TV Jakes and Creflo Dollar, as well as your friendly neighborhood Black preacher, our HBCUs, that's the education, our economic community, and leaders. I would imagine that would be the Black business community, those multinational, perhaps, and certainly million and possibly multi-billion-dollar Black owned and operated corporations, and of course our political leadership, the Al Sharptons. The criteria that we could use to evaluate the philosophies and practices of an Al Sharpton simply would be, how much of this Johari Sita are you helping us organize? Are you helping with us becoming food sovereign, clothing sovereign, shelter sovereign, etc.? And this Johari Sita provides a set of standards, a criteria for measuring Black community progress towards freedom. We can measure our actual, and this I suppose makes it scientific. We can easily measure our progress as a community of African people towards freedom in this country by simply asking ourselves, how close are we to providing food sovereignty to 42 to 45 million African people? What framework and infrastructure are we building to provide clothing sovereignty and shelter sovereignty, etc.? We can quickly move to a few conclusions. Now, once we have this kind of understanding that we've got to be responsible for at least our basics of survival and creating those institutions in those 6 key areas, those multi-billion-dollar markets amongst the 42 to 45 million US Africans, who I think someone pointed out is a $1 trillion, maybe $2 trillion economy, which means that $2 trillion passes through our hands each year. The best description of a Black community is an enclave which has lost but refuses to restore its capacity to produce its own food, clothing, shelter, education, medication, and self-defense. That's the Johari Sita. That's what the Black community is, as it currently is, functioning in this nation and the world. We don't have any sovereignty. I would suggest that maybe 85 to 42 million African Americans, that's 85% of the 42 to 45 million African Americans have lost their capacity as individuals and as families to produce their own sovereignty. The Johari Sita. Consequently, Black people are totally dependent on white-owned corporations and a hostile, white-controlled government to feed, house, clothe, etc., themselves and their children. Ultimate state of dependency. Perhaps within Kawaida theory, certainly not within Kawaida practice, the Johari Sita is evident. In closing, and this is more conclusions, lessons, and takeaways from this conceptual framework called the Johari Sita, the 6 jewels, sovereignty, of liberation, of freedom. The next logical step, but not the last step, in our 400-year-long freedom struggle is to restore our sovereignty by creating a leadership class in 6 critical areas. What are those 6 critical areas? Okay, food, clothing, shelter, education, medical care, which is primarily preventive medical care, if it's used right, understood correctly, and self-defense, as well as maintain our constitutional right to participate in the political process. All right, my brother. That's my contribution here.
Yes, thank you for that. And so you're basically saying in a nutshell, any leadership, whether it be political leadership, grassroots leadership, religious leadership, if they're not promoting the Johari Sita, the 6 key concepts of providing ourselves with food, clothes, shelter, education, medication, and self-defense, in your determination, those people are not leaders at all. Is that correct?
Only if, well, they're not leader. It's not a leadership class that's leading us to sovereignty. Okay, they're leaders. I would not cast any shade and critique them other than saying that if they are not, if a preacher is not organizing his or her congregation to understand, as parishioners of my church, we're going to be working to establish food sovereignty for every member of this church. And by that I mean, we're going to be using space here in the church to store food, clothing, shelter, educational materials, medical supplies, for the parishioners. So in the event of a man-made or natural disaster, which prevents these goods and these goods appearing in your Walmart store or your Giant Eagle store, the church has your back, okay? That's what I'm talking about. There's no reason why Jay-Z and Beyonce, looking at the first, our celebrity leader or cultural leadership, why they don't adopt a HBCU, okay? And channel some of their resources into that particular HBCU. We have sufficient number of Black millionaires right within the hip hop community, which is not necessarily the most conscious community, but within the hip hop community, that they each or two or three of them could decide that we're going to support Spelman, we're going to support Clark and Lamb, we're going to support Fisk, we're going to support Howard, or any one of the 100 plus HBCUs. And if they're not doing that, I'm not saying what they're doing, because they all have projects of one kind or another that they're engaged in to help the Black community. I'm just suggesting that if we want to move towards freedom, and freedom and sovereignty, two are synonymous, and the basis of freedom or sovereignty is having control of your food, clothing, shelter, education, medical care, and self-defense. That's fundamental. And if you don't have that, and if you're not educating and helping our people to understand that and build structures, not just the theory, but the actual practice of building institutions that will provide the Johari Sita, there's room for growth and development in your leadership practice, okay? That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, now what about the idea that sovereignty is a legal expression and it denotes land ownership? I think it's clear to all of us on the panel, even people watching, that our oppressor is not going to just give us free land. So how would you respond to that in terms of this idea that sovereignty is land ownership? Because our oppressor will never solve our problems, nor will they ever participate in the solving of our problems. So what you're saying, does that also connect to land ownership and autonomous, self-sufficient control of land as well?
I think that is a critical component. And we talked about if we're going to establish food sovereignty, I don't remember the brother's first name, Dr. something Muhammad. He's the Nation of Islam's agricultural expert. In an article in the Final Call, this was at least a decade ago, if not longer, he pointed out that in order to feed Black Americans 1 meal a day, we would need to control a piece of real estate roughly the size of Vermont or New Hampshire, which are two of the smaller states, all right? So yeah, land ownership is critical. And I don't think we need to own a whole lot of it, but we do need to own farmland collectively and individually and family, which we can convert into food producing land where we can build intentional communities, where we can provide housing for our people on land that we own. It would be pointless to build these structures on land that we don't own. If we're going to have a clothing factory to provide our people with clothes and shoes, then certainly we need to either make arrangements with those who provide these services now, the Chinese. Some of the clothing, of course, is produced in Central America, Nicaragua. I got clothing produced, which I bought at Walmart, produced in Nicaragua and Honduras. Some of it produced in Jordan, in the Middle East. The people in those nations have the skills to produce clothing, which we can learn from them. So, and again, we got, of course, have land. That's fundamental. Of course, the thing about land having and owning and using land here is that anytime the white power structure wants to take your land, even though you think you own it, they can do so. So we would need to have manufacturing capacity in Africa to produce clothing, for example, and maybe medical supplies. But to do it all here, risk that all being taken from us legally by their definitions, because they own this, all aspects of it, they can do that. So to guard against that, we need to have relations with the African nations, which will allow us to produce those basic necessities of survival on their land in Ghana, for example, not only for the US Black market, but also for the African market. We're a global people, and part of the educational system, if it's liberatory and transformative for African people, has to be international. We're an international people. We're a Pan-African people. I'm preaching to the choir here, that the brothers here know more about this stuff than I do, okay? So they all know exactly what I'm talking about. So, this is nothing new. Others have thought along these same lines. This Johari Sita concept is nothing new, controlling our food, clothing, shelter. Elijah Muhammad taught this, and the Nation of Islam, with some degree of success, were able to put into practice for the nation some of what I'm talking about. So what's beautiful about this is that it's not about creating the will, or it's simply recreating and expanding upon what some of our leadership has done historically. So yeah, brother, land is a critical part of that. But even more, go ahead.
Now I was going to ask Brother Aj or Brother Kwabena if they have any questions for either Baba Hotep or each other. No?
I had something I wanted to share. I know when we talk about these rap artists and given to these and their philanthropy, we just still need to be very, very wary and very careful, because they will do $500,000, $500 million worth of damage and give away 2 million, or they will say we're going to do prison reform in Mississippi and then put out content that encourages Africans to go to prison in 49 of the other states. Well, I should say 50, including Mississippi. So we just got to be very wary of their philanthropy, because that's a lot of times what they do. They push out that, 21 Savage will make a song called Bank Account and is going to teach financial literacy to the masses of our youth, or to a group of youth in Atlanta. But yet the song says, in the song, he said, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 meals on my bank account. Then I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shooters ready to gun you down. And my Glock is cocking. I don't get no F about who I hit. But they give a little bit of philanthropy and they push that poison and that violence and that pornography on the masses. So we got to be very careful with these token tools of European domination who have some wealth, and just got to be very careful with them. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that. But I have a question for you two brothers, as well as for Brother Rollo. If you believe that this Johari Sita idea has value, and I think it does, how do we go about marketing this to our people?
That's a great question.
How do we package this so that we can sell it to our people? I think I've done some of the packaging by putting it within the context of an African philosophy, modeled after the Nguzo Saba, 7 principles. Now we have the 6 jewels. How do we market that?
I would say, in order for us to really reach the multitude of people that we need to reach with that message, it has to be in the church. And the church has to teach it, because most people accept whatever's coming out of the church. The church has the hearts and the minds of a lot of people, and they're very influential. And so I think if the church is not teaching this, then it's going to be difficult to get it out to the masses. That's one outlet it's not everything. Brother Kwabena can tell you an experience he had with some church leaders when he went to them with some progressive ideas and they weren't necessarily trying to act on it. And then when you go back to the backdrop of politics and faith-based initiative where elected officials are giving money to the churches, I don't know that you're going to get a lot out of them, but I don't know how you get that message to the multitude without doing that through the church. So I just wanted to pitch that out there to see what anybody's opinion was on that.
Well, Brother Kwabena understands, as I understand, that one way to get a message to any community of African people is you put it in song, you put it in music, you put it in poetry, you put it in dance. I have a background in music, in poetry, in dance, so certainly, and children's literature. So I'm certainly spending time, which I really don't have a lot of, putting this concept into an artistic framework and then sharing that with our children, primarily because I think that's where we really need to be working. At least that's what we're as an educator. That's one of the arenas which I feel I can make and continue to make a contribution is working with our children because their minds are still being molded and shaped. A lot of our adults, and I use my family, mother and father's people, my extended family, as a point of reference. It's very, very difficult to get through to a 40-year-old bro. But look here, here's some concepts that can help your life that come out of our culture, our African culture. To sell this to the preachers, of course, I would drop the Swahili. They ain't going to vibe with that and just talk about food, clothing, shelter, education, medication, and self-defense. I would take it out of that African context for most of our people, because they got that in its, and I present it within the African context for the African-centered community. And for you scholars, because I know you appreciate that we need to use our culture as a framework for creating those practices and philosophies and institutions that we need here in what the Europeans call the 21st century to move our people forward.
You mentioned the music too. I mean, I look at this Jahara Sita, and this was in the music when we spoke about the golden age of hip hop. A lot of what you talk about right here was in the music, and it's still in the music with a lot of our conscious artists. So that'd be a good way to push it. Also, also I think about. It's in the book. It's in fact. Put in write about it, talk about it. There's some very important concepts. Very jewels. These are some jewels, but having it as part of our culture. And both of y'all mentioned the youth and the children and the youth, because they can go, and you make it plain here. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, brothers. I appreciate that. That helps me to know that I'm moving in the right direction.
And also to like collaborate, because I'm thinking about the Nubian Leadership Circle and our summits, and we have like 8 cadres, and a lot of the cadres deal with some of these issues that are also part of these jewels. And so just to collaborate with other organizations and other groups and work together with them. So I think you maybe should, and we maybe should hook you all up with the Nubian Leadership Circle and some of the things that we're doing with land and food and education and all of this. So yeah.
Okay, well, I would appreciate that, Brother Kwabena, right. Having that connection.
All right, people, we're getting ready to close out because we're almost out of time, but my wife wants to share one more quick message. If she could, sit down.
Okay. So I just wanted to say, fire the slave master so that you can take your proper place as the rightful master. That's something they just came, as I was listening to all you beautiful warriors, that is just something that came to mind and I wrote it down. So fire the slave master so that you can take your proper place in your throne as the master. And when it comes to solutions, yes, put it in the music because we are very terms into rhythm, but also we need people. African people were the first people to migrate throughout the world. So we have African people everywhere. So we need people in the continent of Africa. They are quote unquote African Americans in the continent of Africa doing business with our brothers and sisters in Africa, the UK, and everywhere so that it could go smoothly. So we need people physically there in Africa, African Americans or just Africans that are in this side of the earth to go over there to harmonize and cooperate with our brothers and sisters in Africa so we could begin to trade. We have everything. Africa is rich. We still have our gold and resources there. So if we could collaborate with our brothers and sisters in Africa and our brothers and sisters in the UK, in the US, the key is unity and collaboration. So we could start importing food instead of buying food from China, because that's a lot of imports are coming from China. We could get our clothes, we could get our natural herbs, everything, education, books, everything that you could think of. We could create a web, a network with each other, because we are not lacking anything. We have expert in every single field. So everyone here has a specific gift and talent. So if we use our gifts and talents and collaborate with those people and allow them to use their talents as well, then we could actually get far. Put aside our ego, put aside our differences. We are all one African people. Okay, and I'm getting like kicked out of here. I love you guys. Thank you so much.
All right, people, that's gonna be it. We're gonna wrap for today. I definitely want to thank everyone that participated. Baba Hotep, Brother Kwabena, Brother Aj. Salute to DJ Tiger and everyone over there at the Fullblast Radio Network. Anyone want to say anything in closing before we leave?
Asante Sana, Brother Ra, Masu, for doing this, bro. Let's just say Asante Sana to you.
For sure. And I would like to think that we can continue the conversation and continue to act on some of these practical ideas that everybody conveyed here today to move us forward as a people and to continue to move the culture forward.
Is it possible, Brother Rollo, for those who want to continue to dialogue to remain in this Zoom space?
You know what? I'm thinking now I can create something on this Zoom so that we can maybe come back together at a later date and continue to have more conversations. Okay. And I would like to bring everyone that's on here, Brother Aj, Brother Kwabena, and you also, Baba Hotep, and we can come back and we can have more dialogue on this same outlet, if everyone would agree.
But not when I use Zoom with my staff and other Zoom discussions I've had, I've been able as host to step away and allow those who do want to continue the dialogue, the discussion, staff meeting, continue to use the Zoom, because when we get it, we pretty much get it for as much time as we want to use it.
Okay, I'm not that good. Go ahead.
That's here at the university where we have Zoom, and we can leave a Zoom on for however long we want to continue with a particular discussion. Because I would like to dialogue with these two brothers. I don't know them and they don't know me, but we are part of the same liberatory cadre, if you will. And of course, as you Queen pointed out, it's about the networking, it's about the collaboration, it's about building the trust, building the unity, getting to know each other so that we can build the kinds of institutions that we know our people need. But that's not going to happen without a whole lot of collaboration, a whole lot of relationship building and trust and respect and so forth, so that we can move the game forward.
Yeah.
But if you can't do that, that's not a problem. Perhaps we can come back at another day. My email is hotep@duq.edu. Maybe I can put that down in the chat room.
Okay. Yeah, you could do that. You could feel free to do that.
Okay, and I'll try to make that work. I've never used the chat room or put anything in chat. But I can, but you have that information, Brother Rollo. So you can have it. Yeah, you can send it to these brothers.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Okay. And I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we're doing work here, but it's not as expansive and as dynamic and as internationally and nationally connected to progressive scholars and thinkers and activists as we should be and could be. So I would like to share that you all's contact information here with the conscious community here in Pittsburgh.
Brother Aj just put his information out to you. But I can link everybody up after the fact, though.
Okay, sounds good, my brother.
Yeah, so I have to.
Opportunity. I'm sorry, Asante Sana.
Yeah, thank you, and to thank everyone else for joining the panel as well. All right, people, peace and Pan-Africanism.
I like that, peace and Pan-Africanism. I love that. Right on.
All right, bro, peace.
Are you going to hang around, Brother Corbina? Do you have to dash?
I got a dash, man, but I got your information again, and our brother can hook us up, man. So hopefully we can talk soon. But I did send you the information on the Nubian Leadership Circle.org. I put that in the chat. So make sure you check that out. Okay.
Will do. All right, peace and blessings.
One love.
One love. Same to you, DJ Tiger.